And welcome, folks, to the latest and greatest from Step Brother Sports, part of the Hockey Podcast Network and the Bills Mafia Buffalo fan base platform. We are brought to you by Rich Brow Brewing, located at 5 South 20th Street, and they are Richmond's premier Buffalo Bills backers bar. And folks, the NHL regular season has returned. We have some real Buffalo Sabres hockey back tomorrow night. Bills, on the other hand, are back at practice tomorrow after their squandered opportunity against New England this past week leaves them at 4-1. However, we have a great show lined up tonight, though, especially if you're looking to get your yins on. So we have a returning guest and one of our very first ones we've had on the show as well. And she was kind enough to bring her beau along this time with us, too. So we are fortunate enough to get a package deal this time around. And you can find these two doing outstanding work covering their teams in the Pittsburgh market, whether it's on WPXI Channel 11 in the greater Pittsburgh region or on The Athletic. You can count on them knowing just about everything there is to know about Pittsburgh sports, whether it's the Steelers, the Penguins, Pirates, Pitt Panthers, everything about it. But please welcome the couple that yins together, Jenna Harner and Mike DeFabo.
Yes.
That's an incredible introduction. I love all the references to yins. And in case people don't know about that, basically you need a plural for you. So in some places they say y'all. In Pittsburgh, it's yins. And it's become kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing. Basically, everyone has like a cousin that unironically uses the word yins. But then for the most people, it's kind of like a little bit of a – like there's a ton of inside jokes in Pittsburgh, and that's one of them that we all appreciate. And so the funny thing, though, is I'm actually from Pittsburgh. Jenna's not. And so she'll use all these Pittsburghese phrases and like the accent.
Ooh. Pittsburghese. I've never heard of that what the language or the dialect be called. That's funny.
Yeah, and so it just makes me accidentally say like downtown when she's just saying it as a joke, but now I'm accidentally saying it for real because I grew up here.
Oh, there you go.
I picked up a couple, like slippy instead of slippery is perfect. Dippy, like a dippy egg instead of like it's like an over medium egg. Like those are the words I want in my vocabulary.
Well, there you have it. So it was meant to be right from the start, right when you guys met each other. But still, welcome back, guys. We are glad to have you. Shout out again. We were mentioning this right before off camera to one of our best friends, Brian Griffin, also a couple times guest on the show now, for helping make this connection happen once again. But Jenna and Mike, how are things? I know you guys did that awesome trip to Ireland for the international game. And you also, again, were just mentioning your ensuing bye-week trip to London that you got to enjoy. So how was all that?
It was unbelievable. Yeah, the trip to Dublin, the game in Dublin, Jenna, tell them just about the atmosphere because we both agreed that this was one of the coolest games that we've ever covered.
It was just unbelievable. You're walking into this massive stadium. It holds about, what was it, like 10 to 12,000 people more.
So 75,000 people were there, more than your average, like 60, the Steelers playing at Acrisure, which is like 60, 65. So just the sheer number of people created more opportunities for sound and noise. And then people I felt like were so into the game.
It was just fascinating to see too, because like we knew, Steelers fans, Steelers Nation travels well, and everybody, picks those road games to go to during the season, whether it's Vegas, LA, maybe a Florida game here or there. But I think everybody in Pittsburgh, as soon as even the trickling of, hey, the Steelers might be playing in Dublin came out, they were like, we're going to this game. It was insane. Everywhere you turned in Dublin during the week and then during the game itself, terrible towels were everywhere. Renegade was one of the coolest experiences in that stadium. Just the towels were twirling everywhere. It felt like a true Steelers home game. And then you just had so many more people, but the crowd really got into it. Our brother-in-law, Mike's younger sister, her husband, Nick, is from London. He's a British guy, and that was his first Steelers game ever. And he was just like, that was the coolest environment ever. So it was one of the coolest games to be a part of, and just such amazing history. And you could tell that the guys had a lot of fun with that game.
That's great. Sounds like he has a team for life now that they came to Dublin and won the first inaugural game. So that's awesome.
Yeah, no, he had a great time, and he was kind of cracking up because my sister isn't the biggest sports fan. She works like in an art gallery in London, kind of more the artistic side of things. And she was apparently like screaming, going nuts, waving her terrible towel. And he was like, I've never seen this side of you before. And we're married. So he very much enjoyed that. And then it was pretty cool. We got to go over to London and spend the bye week with them. And as you can see, it got the Ted Lasso hat. We did visit Richmond, and that was a cool experience. So overall, I think it was like an awesome trip and really, really fun overall.
That's great.
Lots of Guinnesses.
I can only imagine the amount of Guinness that came with that too. But I mean, just for that international feel, just for how well the Steelers were welcomed that way. And I'm sure Vikings fans were too, maybe to a little bit of a lesser extent, but still. What an awesome experience, and you guys are just able to like freshly talk about that as it just being so recent. But anyway, Mike, as I was just saying to you off camera, obviously we got to know Jenna quite a bit just in these last couple of years, and also on the first pod we did with her. Since it is your first time on, give us a little history of yourself, especially for those who are uninitiated. I'd love to hear about your sports origins, maybe your favorite memories as a fan, growing up in the Pittsburgh area, and also what got you into your role that you're in today at The Athletic.
Sure, I'll try to keep this quick and not go on too long. But basically, I grew up in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, which is the hometown of Steelers training camp. And so as a kid, I used to go there all the time. I still remember trying to get an autograph from Jerome Bettis and that whole experience. And so like in Pittsburgh and in Western Pennsylvania, everybody is obsessed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like my Italian grandmother, when she met Jenna for the first time, the first thing she said to her was, "What's wrong with the run defense?" So you're kind of born with it, like very much how Bills Mafia, you see those kids get baptized by dropping them through the little card tables. They wrap kids in terrible towels here when they're babies. That's their baby blanket they're swaddled in. So I was brought up within that culture. And so, you know, when I was in high school, my sister was the editor. My older sister was the editor of the high school newspaper. And she basically forced me, as an older sister would do, to write for it. And I kind of enjoyed it. And then when it came time to pick a college, you know, I didn't really know what I wanted to do because I was an 18-year-old kid. And the only thing I could think about was I liked sports and I kind of enjoyed myself working for the student newspaper. And that led me to journalism. And then, you know, in terms of my career, I think a pivotal part was like through college, I did everything they tell you to do in college. Like I had an internship every semester. I got good grades. I wrote for the student newspaper. I sucked up to my professors. And I thought like, okay, I'm going to be that young kid fresh out of college that gets the job covering Major League Baseball, and I'll just have it made for myself. I'll go back to Pittsburgh. I'll cover the Pirates for a couple of years, then move up. Well, I applied, and I tell this to like anytime I talk to students in journalism, I applied to literally 100 jobs. Like not just like, oh, it was like 100 jobs. No, it was like I counted, and it was like 104 jobs that I applied to over the course of a year. I didn't get any of them. And so here I am a year out of college thinking, like, is this really for me? Like, am I ever going to even get my foot in the door, let alone get where I want to? And finally, my first opportunity was at a very small town, Fairmont, West Virginia, where they covered 3 high schools: East Fairmont, West Fairmont, and North Marion. And the advice I got from one of my mentors was go there, go for a year, put your head down, work as hard as you possibly can. And when you're done with that year, pick your head up and see what kind of opportunities are around you. And I kind of took that approach, and to streamline the story, basically kind of climb the ladder in the traditional way, one step at a time. So I went from high schools in West Virginia to then I covered high schools for a newspaper group out in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. So that's 2 states I had lived in. And then I moved to Indiana to cover Purdue.
Oh, you've been far and wide, my friend. That's great.
That felt like some kind of a huge breakthrough moment that I was finally covering college sports, and I was covering the Big Ten. Then I went and I covered Michigan State and followed their run to the Final Four in 2019. And then finally, I got a chance to come back to Pittsburgh, and I worked for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette covering the Penguins. That's where I met Jenna, and then finally moved over to the Athletic. So, you know, I think my story, for no matter if you're a journalism aspiring journalist, I think that the thing you could take is just perseverance and really looking for just any opportunity. I think a lot of people want to cover their favorite team, which is awesome. and I'm lucky enough to cover the team that I grew up rooting for. But what helped me the most was just being willing to go anywhere and just pursue the story. And I'm really fortunate. Like I always try to remind myself when there's tough days, when I don't want to do it, when it feels like a job, when I have a tough moment in the locker room, like, hey, remember how badly you wanted to do this and remember everything you sacrificed to get here. And it definitely makes me appreciate it a little bit more.
That is so admirable, and you got to just do nothing but respect that grind, man. So props to you, and cheers to that more than anything, really. So
I wish I had beer.
Seriously, like, again, to anybody that listened to that right there for wanting to pursue the thing you absolutely love to do, that is a testament to it right there. So absolutely, thank you so much for sharing that, Mike.
Yeah, and it really, luck plays a big role in it too. Like, I'm not going to pretend like, just because I'm in because I got a great opportunity, it means that I'm some kind of like special writer or something like that. A lot of it is just being in the right place at the right time and continuing to take chances and continuing to believe in yourself and continue to strive towards your goals. Like, all that stuff sounds cliche, and I feel like I'm like a high school health class poster, but it did work out. That was what I did. I just put my head down and kept going towards my goal, no matter how much I felt like it wasn't going to happen for me. And eventually I got really lucky.
So again, super impressive. So I know Sean wanted to kind of add a little bit to that too.
Just a quick one. Yeah, obviously we all have to kind of like make our own breaks. And when we had Jenna on the first time, we told her some of our kind of shared connections outside of obviously Brian and Buffalo origins and things like that. But for you, Mr. Mike, the little 412 connection, as I shared with Jenna when she was on, when I was in college, I actually lived in Oakland, and I worked for Comcast as like my summer job, which was fun. And then these days, we still have, hate to say it, but we have the mini packs for the Pirates. So actually, yeah, I mean, I'll talk more about them later. I know Chris wants to get into the Steelers first with you guys, but I tried to shoot you guys a message when I was there because I think we went. I think in the last game was in, I want to say, beginning of July, maybe. Our dad's he's a Tigers fan, but also Pirates as well. And I figured maybe we can meet up and grab some food and a drink, and we will, because we'll get tickets again next year.
We have to now.
I think, yeah. So we're around. I go to at least maybe 2 or 3 series per year and stay, and so it'll be fun to kind of catch up.
It's a beautiful ballpark too. Not so much a good baseball team, but an awesome experience. Good day.
One of the best in the league for sure.
Definitely.
The backdrop is just, I think, one of the most unmatched ones out there. So, I mean, like Sean was saying for our dad, like Detroit's got a pretty great one with the Detroit skyline right behind you, just like the setup they have. But Pittsburgh is still one of the best.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's a shame that they don't have a better team because it is one of the most beautiful ballparks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But anyway, let's get down to business. Starting with NFL, Steelers, again, right in your guys' wheelhouse. So the team now being led by the often mercurial quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, has the team beginning with a season with a solid 3-1 record, well ahead of the rest of the AFC North, considering the circumstances around those teams. Their games consisted of an exciting shootout and revenge game against the Jets in Week 1 for Aaron Rodgers. Then following a tough beating from the Seahawks in Week 2, then with a dominant defensive win against the Patriots in Week 3, which we wish the Bills could say that, and a nail-biter finish in Ireland against the Carson Wentz-led Vikings. But this week, Dylan Gabriel and the Cleveland Browns are on deck at home, and the Steelers have an excellent +7 turnover margin working in their favor so far. So again, that defense really doing the Mike Tomlin thing, just being hard to play against. But again, with that brief summary in mind, what have been, for both of you guys, your immediate takeaways of the season so far? Now that we're about a month in, everybody's starting to see like who's who in both the AFC and the NFC. And how can the Steelers continue a successful last ride, at least in theory, for Aaron Rodgers this season?
Was that you pointing to me, Mike?
Go ahead, Jenna.
Well, it's been really interesting because I think there were interesting expectations of what the Steelers team was going to be coming into this season. You knew that they were going to have a really dominant defense. This was a defense that used a lot of big historic words to talk about themselves coming into the year. They, Mike Tomlin said they could be historic. Guys in the locker room were saying, they have the chance to be one of the best defenses. And that wasn't what we saw week 1. In fact, take it to week 4. That's kind of the first time it really feels like we saw what the Steelers defense is really capable of. Yes, they did produce a lot of the splash week 3 against the Patriots and force a lot of those takeaways, but this is a group also that hasn't been entirely healthy for the majority of this early portion of the season here. You have your DBs in Joey Porter Jr., your Darius Slay, Jalen Ramsey, and then Deshaun Elliott, kind of all getting mixed in here. But a lot of these guys we haven't seen this group cohesively together. Juan Thornhill too, obviously, is a safety. But we haven't seen them really all on the field at once here. And you knew on the offensive side, it was going to be Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, he still has his arm talent, but he's not nearly as mobile as what he was in his prime, of course. But this was a very young Steelers offensive line too. And they're still kind of working through a lot of the things. They're figuring things out. Broderick Jones switching, going to left tackle, his more comfortable position, what he played in college. You have Troy Fautanu getting his first real true year because he missed last year pretty much with injury. So this was a interesting piece of a team that we didn't know what we were going to see, and there hasn't been a lot of consistency except for this past week in Ireland, where or 2 weeks ago now at this point. I don't even know what week we're in at this point, but they showed a lot of flashes of what this team could be through that first 3 quarters, and then obviously there was some injuries, so there was some defensive miscommunications. The Vikings kind of come back into this game. If you watch the Steelers avidly, that's pretty much the type of game that they play every single week. It always seems to come down to the end. It always seems to be this nail biter. The defense has to go out there, make one last stop. But I think up to this point, this team has really kind of surpassed expectations, especially when you look at what else is happening with the rest of the AFC North. Is there still a lot of room for growth? Absolutely. But I think if you asked a lot of people coming into the year that the Steelers would be in the position that they are right now, I don't know if a lot of people would have said, oh yeah, no, this is kind of as right now, and it's still very early, but they're kind of in the driver's seat right now for the division. Things can change. Obviously, I think they're going to change, but I don't think a lot of people came in and said, hey, this is the team that we expected them to be.
Yeah, and then stylistically, I think what they're doing right now offensively is they have a lot of limitations that they have to work around. So they've invested really heavily into their offensive line. They have a first-round pick at left tackle in Broderick Jones, a first-round pick at right tackle in Troy Fautanu, and a second-round pick at center in Zach Frazier. But especially those young tackles are still developing. And so you've got inexperienced offensive line, experienced some growing pains, and a 41-year-old quarterback who's not as mobile as he once was. What's the best way to work around that? And it's to get the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands as quickly as possible. So that is their style of offense. And so what you have is you look at like the next gen stats. I think Rodgers is getting the ball out of his hands at average 2.5 seconds or around there, fastest in the league. He's also air yards per attempt, 4.7, the fewest in the league. Now, we saw in Pittsburgh a couple years ago with Ben Roethlisberger, they tried this approach, and it worked. They were 11-0 to start. Then everybody realized, hey, look, they're not going to throw the ball down the field. They brought those safeties down, and all of a sudden the whole thing kind of collapsed upon itself. The reason why this might be more sustainable is they're throwing the ball mostly, I think, to protect Rodgers. He still does have the arm talent, unlike Ben Roethlisberger. And the other part of it is they're getting a ton of yards after the catch. They actually lead the league in yards after the catch. And so when you're throwing it quickly, but you're getting it to DK Metcalf, and he's turning a 15-yard completion into an 80-yard touchdown. Or Jonnu Smith, their new tight end, who really is, but he's not a tight end because he can line up in so many different places. He could take a screen to the house. Calvin Austin, their second wide receiver, he runs a 4-3. You get him the ball in space. So, as much as you want to look at this offense and say like it's dink and dunk, there's not much to it. They're able to have success, and I think it might be more sustainable than what we think. But we kind of have to wait and see there. So that's kind of like the feel of the offense, and then you just have to wonder, like, can it get there? In terms of big picture, like, is Rodgers going to end the Steelers' now 8-year postseason winless drought? Is he going to lead them to maybe an AFC championship game or something like that? I think the key is they believe so much in this defense. For the 4th consecutive year, this is going to be the NFL's highest paid defense. And in Pittsburgh, people would say, if you pay the most, you should be the best. And they've paid the most in the past only to watch that defense fall apart when they face physical rushing offenses, when they face elite quarterback play, or when they're in the postseason. And so, like, I think that's the biggest key is this defense right now that's been kind of up and down to eventually become dominant, to be the number one defense when it really matters. And they're going to need that no matter what version of Aaron Rodgers they get.
Yeah, a good comprehensive look on that, too. I was doing a little bit of a deeper dive on the Steelers just in preparation for you guys coming on. But a couple things that kind of stuck out to me, which were eye-opening in a couple different ways, was the offense. While you mentioned like they do have some efficiency, especially getting the ball out very quickly, they have been inconsistent through the just throughout like their production in the games, but they are extremely efficient in the red zone, converting almost 70% of their red zone trips into touchdowns. So again, that kind of goes to show you like that quick release can really go a long way. And then a problematic thing though on the defense though is while still doing great things and being dominant and causing those takeaways and turnovers, for their 4th quarter defense, though, they're ranking 30th right now for points allowed in the 4th quarter with 11.3 per game. Are there any quick fixes you guys see on the horizon for how both of those things can be fixed in the long run? Do you see any adjustments made? Are there any players maybe injured currently that may come back to help alleviate those things? What are your thoughts?
Well, in terms of offense, that's a great point that they are extremely efficient in the red zone right now. And I think that needs to continue to be part of their identity. I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head that with Rodgers' quick release and DK Metcalf's ability to win on slants, quick in-breaking routes or on outs, or just simple jump balls, like they should be a really good red zone team. So the key is how can you get into the red zone more? And that's been something Aaron Rodgers has talked to us about. And I think the biggest key is unlocking this running game. Like I talked about that investment in the offensive line. The whole point was they were trying to model themselves to a degree after the Eagles and build a team from the trenches out. And obviously, every football guy is going to say, yeah, the game's won in the trenches. But there's only certain teams that really do to a large degree, like the Eagles, that, on the backs of their offensive linemen, they are going to will their way to victory, and you're not going to be able to beat them because their offensive line is so good. So finding a reliable running game, I think, is going to be the key for them to sustain drives between the 20s and create more balance. I think that's the biggest thing when I look offensively. And like Rodgers has talked about it too. Like from my point of view, they're throwing it short because they got to find a way to get the ball to their 41-year quarterback's hands. From his point of view, he's claiming, well, we're seeing a lot of too high coverages and a lot of cover two in general. And he would tell you that the best way to get a team out of a too high shell would be to run the football. So one way or another, they need to run the ball a little bit better.
Yeah, and on defense too, again, I go back to a little bit of the health. They haven't had their full complement of guys, and that is never an excuse, of course. And you'll look across the league at teams that are much more battered than the Steelers are right now. But I think it's just a little bit of the cohesion and a little bit of the communication was such a big part of this team's struggles down the stretch last season when they went on that 5-game losing skid to end the year, and we saw a little bit of those problems kind of pop up again early, the Jets game in particular, when it was that back and forth shootout. Justin Fields looked phenomenal and it was kind of one of the best games he's played in his career up to this point. And I think it just kind of goes back to this team getting on the same page. And, you look even the Vikings game, that 81-yard completion to Jordan Addison, that was just a total busted coverage. And it was a clear miscommunication for sure. So those little things like that, and granted, it was because I believe Jalen Ramsey had just come out of the game.
Yeah, Ramsey had just come out of the game. And so they had they went to their big nickel. So 3 safeties and one of them representing a nickel. And they didn't know which of the safeties was supposed to be the nickel, apparently. I think that was part of the miscommunication, is just identifying who was the nickel within that. For me, like, it's interesting you bring up this great stat about their fourth quarter defense, because in the fourth quarter of seasons, like the end of seasons, that's where we're seeing the defense unravel. Like, this defense last year was tied for the league lead in turnovers produced. They were top 10 in scoring defense. The Steelers won 2 games where the offense failed to score a touchdown because of their defense. But when it really mattered late in the season, when you play the Eagles, when you play the Ravens, when you play the Chiefs, and you're paying all this money on defense and you're counting on them to do something special, they look average at best. And that's been the problem with this defense recently, is they have looked dominant against the Browns or against, name the subpar team. But Lamar Jackson had the best playoff game of his entire NFL career against the Steelers. Josh Allen a couple years ago had one of the better playoff games ever against these Steelers. Patrick Mahomes a few years back, they scored so many points, they literally ran out of fireworks at Arrowhead. Like, they had to put it.
I'm not gonna lie, I forgot about that one. I think that early on, everybody was hopeful TJ Watt got that fumble recovery. Actually, no, it was Derek Watt, wasn't it? Derek Watt that did that?
I think TJ also had a pick 6 or something.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Giving everybody hope.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is like, if your approach is going to be, we're spending the most on defense, and yet Lamar Jackson has his best game ever against his defense, or you look average against Josh Allen, what's the point, right? Like, why not just say, all right, well, it's not working, let's do what everybody else is doing and just try to win in a shootout against Josh Allen? And so that's really the true test of what this defense is going to be, is what they can achieve in the playoffs.
That sounds awfully familiar for what we talk about here.
Words right out of my mouth. I said this sounds eerily similar to the Buffalo Bills defense right now. With Sean McDermott.
Yeah, but fun comment from our friend Jesse. So old friend of ours, go way back. But he says, just kind of going back to the Bills game this past Sunday, can we agree that the all white and all red jerseys are a terrible omen? So I'll personally agree with the cold front white jerseys at the moment, but red, I think they have a little bit of a better success right there. But I will be all for saying that the white jerseys are cursed until said otherwise.
I tweeted about it.
Mm-hmm.
I tweeted about it because I was like, oh, these are really clean. Like, these are so nice. These are snazzy. And we fell asleep, as we were adjusting back to East Coast time. So we fell asleep before the end of that game. I wake up and I'm just kind of in a groggy daze. And I was like, the Bills, how did they lose this game? And then I had a friend from Buffalo reply to my tweet. He's like, yeah, we're not saying these jerseys are cool anymore. We're not doing that.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
0-1, can't do it. But I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the division, at large that you're in. Obviously, it's been a crazy year for injuries already. Joe Burrow out long-term in Cincinnati. Lamar has been banged up. We don't know how long he's going to be out and when he may be back. It seems like a never-ending QB carousel in Cleveland now with another new starter. Joe Flacco now on his third team in the AFC North, nonetheless, after being traded from Cleveland to Cincinnati. So what are your takeaways on that division as a whole? And I know you touched a little bit about it already. Is there any one of those teams that does pose a true threat to the Steelers at all? And then even outside of that a little bit, because I know you did talk about that already. As far as this year and how it's looking, we've talked a lot about none of the teams, even Philly, and we thought like Buffalo and Philly might have been the class of the league. Everybody seems to have some warts. It doesn't really seem like there's one dominant team. So I guess, has your opinion changed at all on, an outlook of who the best teams are, and maybe can the Steelers be among them, considering everybody has issues?
Yeah, coming into this year, I predicted the Steelers would go 10-7. And if they got the right matchup, they could win a playoff game. And I feel like my thoughts haven't really changed on the Steelers much, because you look at their 3 wins. One of them was a 2-point win over Justin Fields and the Jets, who are now winless still. Their next win was against the Patriots, and the Patriots moved the ball at will, but basically beat themselves with 5 turnovers. And then they beat the Vikings in a game with Carson Wentz playing behind 3 backup offensive linemen, where the Steelers were able to get 6 sacks. So you play who's on your schedule, but the Steelers don't really have that statement win that's telling everybody they can be legitimate contenders. But at the same time, they've taken care of their business. They're 3-1, and they have a pretty clear path to 5-1. They play the Browns this week, and I mean, they're favored, and it keeps going up. It was 4.5 was the line. Now I think it's 5.5, if not higher.
Just got to 5.5 today.
And then they've got the Bengals after that, who are going to be playing with Joe Flacco, who at that point will have been with the team for like 10 days. So yeah, they could get to 5-1 very easily. And so I think that the key for the Steelers to reach their full potential or to hit their ceiling is to win this division and host a playoff game. And I think that that's really going to make like a world of difference. If they're on the road somewhere as a wild card team, I think we're going to be talking about same old Steelers, same season of another 10-win year and another first-round playoff exit. But if you win the division, you host the playoff game, you get the better matchup, that's your road to ending this, and that's your way to moving on. And in terms of like who could challenge them, I think the Bengals are dead. I think it's going to be like last year where Joe Burrow, he's going to come back and he's going to rally them. And it's going to be too little, too late. And I wonder if the Ravens are going to be like the 2024 Bengals, where, even once Lamar gets healthy, I wonder if they're going to find themselves a game or two short of where they need to be. But like, I just feel like the Ravens are the only ones that really, I think, have a chance. What do you think, Jenna?
Yeah, I think you and I, Mike, have talked about this, but the Steelers play the Ravens week 18 in Pittsburgh, which very happy it's not in Baltimore, because the last, I can't even remember how many years that game has been in Baltimore. And it's been either like brutally cold and rainy, a little bit snowy. It's just been awful weather, and that's AFC North football. That's what you expect. But the fact that it's a home game, I think, is much better. We as the Steelers reporters enjoy that, obviously. But I do think that game is going to make a big swing potentially in what this division could end up being. I do think it's going to come down to the end, because when the Steelers schedule came out at the start of the year, before all of this, before the Ravens injuries and where they currently are in the division, the Steelers back half of the schedule, especially this, pulling it up right now, it's this 5-week stretch where they host the Bills, then they go to the Ravens, they have the Dolphins at home, which obviously looks much different now. Then they go to Detroit, to Cleveland, and then finish things up against Baltimore. Like, that end of the schedule for the Steelers is going to be a big challenge. And last year, that was where they fell apart. That's where they had the division in their hands. They just needed to win one of 3 games. And granted, those 3 games were the Ravens, the Eagles, and the Chiefs. But they just had to get a win, and then they could have hosted the home playoff game, and the season unraveled. So that is going to be, how do they prevent that from happening again this year? How do they look to just take control of this division and move forward and get the wins when it matters? We were doing some stats research here tonight ahead of, we're getting ready for obviously this weekend's game against the Browns, but the short week next week, Thursday night against the Bengals. Mike Tomlin has never won a Thursday night game against a divisional opponent on the road. He's 0-6. Does that change next week?
Was last year the snow game on a Thursday?
Yeah, that one against Cleveland.
Yeah.
Weird things happen in the AFC North, and weird things happen on Thursday Night Football when you bring them both together. You get a snow game in Cleveland that the Browns have no business winning, and they end up beating the Steelers and messing up their season. So yeah, the 2 things need to happen. Like this, are the Ravens going to get healthy enough? And are they going to go on the run that we all expect them to? Or are the Steelers going to take care of business and then be competitive when they play a lot of playoff games, like playoff teams? They still have to play the Green Bay Packers. They still have to play the Colts that are frisky now. They still have to play those 3 or 4 teams that Jenna mentioned there at the end of the season. So, like, the early good start that they've had, that was much needed. if they were going to get to the playoffs, they needed to start at least 2-2 or 3-1. They've done that part of it. And now you have to see if they can actually capitalize on the early momentum and the early lead that they have.
Awesome. Now to kind of like circle back to the Bills on our side of things, though. Steelers and Bills, of course, like you were saying, Mike, have met a few times now in the Josh Allen era. Obviously, some interesting games on that resume. A couple Sunday night matchups. You had that 2019 matchup against Duck Hodges. Bills clinched the playoff spot there. I think, Jenna, were you still in Buffalo at that point?
I was covering that game. No, Mike has a great story for this.
And I was covering the Pittsburgh Penguins, so I could still be a huge fan. And I was in Calgary in a bar watching that one, and they like kept it open extra late. My heart was broken. So I remember it very well.
Yeah, but hey, at least Tomlin kept a streak of the 500 season going there, despite having Duck Hodges at quarterback, of course. But we had the Sunday Night Football in the COVID season. When Stephon Diggs, he had his first year there. He was taking that game over in the second half. Looked like the Steelers going to really make that one a tough one after, like you were saying, that 11-0 start. 2021 season opener. We talked about that one already. TJ Watt dominating that game. Had a pretty key sack on Josh Allen as well, and a block punt for a touchdown be the deciding factor with that one. But then there was a dominant beatdown at the hands of Josh Allen and Gabe Davis in 2022 with those two big, deep touchdown passes. And then obviously, like you're saying, that aforementioned playoff matchup that was delayed by that ridiculous snowfall in Buffalo too. So needless to say, lots of change for both teams throughout that time period, of course. And like we're saying, Jenna's quite familiar with Buffalo from her time there. But what I'm asking both of you guys now, again, Josh Allen, reigning MVP, of course. He makes the team go. They go however he makes the team go, of course. But what do you both see out of the team for this coming season? And obviously, we always love to hear outsiders' perspectives on the team, because if we just continue to talk in the same echo chamber we're in, the opinions are just going to continue to overlap, of course. So ultimately, do you think the Bills are a true contender this year, or are there too many warts evident now, like the continuous third down defense being an issue, or the lack of just consistency on offense and just getting stuck in the mud for quarters 2 and 3, just to kind of take that next step? And also keep in mind, like Jenna was mentioning before, the Bills play the Steelers in Pittsburgh for Week 13, so that future matchup is on the horizon. So what are your guys' thoughts on the Bills so far this year?
I think that okay, let me not jinx them, but I think this might be their year. I really do.
Everything crossed, knock on all the wood.
So coming into this year, I thought that it was going to be the Ravens' year, and I felt like they had a loaded roster. They had a quarterback who could lead them. They are like a sound, stable franchise. And now that team is in total disarray, right? Their quarterback's injured. The Chiefs are going through their struggles right now, and you wonder if they're more bulletproof than they've been in previous years. And so, those teams plus the Bills are the big dogs in the AFC. There's no question that, over the last several years, those have been the three teams you go into every year saying one of these three has a legitimate chance to come out and represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. And I just think there's a very real possibility that this could finally be the Bills' year where they're able to crack through. They have the quarterback, and that's the biggest thing. If you have a Josh Allen as your quarterback, you have what it takes to stand toe-to-toe against these other elite quarterbacks in the playoffs. The Steelers don't. They just don't have – they haven't had it in years, and they haven't been able to be competitive in playoff games. So, I don't know. I think that I would very much almost expect the Bills to be in the AFC Championship game. And I know it's a tough place to be where with high expectations, then all of a sudden, you judge them by different criteria, and it's easy to nitpick when things aren't perfect. And obviously they weren't in the most recent game, but I just think that they are going to be one of those teams at the very end that's going to be within contention.
I know many Bills Mafia are hoping that you're right with that one, Mike. Jenna, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when you have Josh Allen at your quarterback, you win more games than you lose. And I love watching him and just the magic that he creates and just the way that he extends plays for so much longer than you would ever expect a quarterback to extend a play. And I know that defensively they've been dealing with some injuries. The first round pick was a cornerback, right?
Yes, Maxwell Harrison. So unfortunately, he got injured I think like the third or fourth padded practice in the training camp. And it was like an LCL sprain, and it's kept him out for a good period of time. Like the injured reserve timeline has already passed, but he's not likely to be seen at least for a little bit, because Sean McDermott came out and really tempered expectations for what to see out of Maxwell Harrison this year, because he had the fastest 40 time at the combine this year, or one of them. And people were very excited about that to kind of keep up with a lot of those speedster receivers that are around the AFC. But right now, as much as everybody loved seeing Trey White come back to the team after a year away, being on both the Rams and the Ravens, I mean, his age is starting to show, as much as it's painful for a lot of people to admit and see. Stephon Diggs still obviously looking like he's in prime form this past Sunday. Unfortunately, he cooked Trey White on a lot of those routes he ran, which is, again, tough for a lot of Bills faithful to see, but that's just the nature of how it goes.
Young man's game.
Mm-hmm. But Jenna, what were some of your other thoughts too?
I was going to say, I know that defensively they've been banged up a little bit. And I know offensively they're kind of searching for who is that guy? I know there was a lot of conversation after the Patriots game of, man, this team misses that Stephon Diggs type receiver. And I know that they do have a wealth of guys available. And, you have a lot of really talented, your tight end room is really talented. Obviously, I think Keon Coleman's still good. I think he's still getting his feet under him, though. I feel I keep wanting to see more from him and expecting more, just based on who he was when he came in to the league and when he was drafted. But the talent is there. I think it's so funny too, because we feel like we always kind of get to this point during the early portions of the year where we're starting to figure teams out. We're like, okay, who's good, who's not? But then I always have to remind myself, okay, it's only we're going into week 6 here. It's still very early on the season. It's still really young. We haven't even reached the halfway point, let alone the third point of the year. But you look at the Bills and you look at just how they're composed, how their coaching staff is comprised. Sean McDermott wins consistently, knowing, yes, there are some coaching decisions that people don't always agree with from him. But I look at this team and they're a very good team, and I don't anticipate them not figuring it out. I fully expect that, this Patriots loss was just a tough division game, and they're going to bounce right back from it.
I think it's funny you're having us on now, because we know what it's like in Pittsburgh or in any NFL city where you lose a game that you're not supposed to, and everyone is kind of freaking out and wondering, is this team as good as we expected them to be? I chalk it up to weird things happen, like in the division. Divisional teams know each other well, and it's hard to beat a team twice. I think that the 4 wins more accurately represents who they are versus the one letdown to a team that you feel like they probably shouldn't have lost to.
Yeah, in that game, everybody has done quite a bit of commentary already. Like, the Bills ultimately beat themselves with the turnovers that they had. The trick play that Dawson Knox did, the run around there, which was trying to look like what would be a reverse play. That was a questionable call. I think Joe Brady answered some questions about that on Monday. You had the uncharacteristic interception for Josh Allen, especially in the red zone. That was kind of a backbreaker, not to mention Keon Coleman early on in the game also. Like, he caught a pass and fumbled it right away after having some initial contact made from a Patriots defender. So they ultimately beat themselves. The defense showed up for plenty parts of that game as well. They only held the Patriots to 6 points in that first half, but they unraveled just a little bit and enough for the Patriots obviously to threaten enough and take the game from them. But still, in the times where they needed them most, like you were saying, Mike, it was just an uncharacteristic loss. And it just, like you said, division games can be real goofy like that.
Yeah. And they just, and we talked about it a couple of times, like post game and what else. Like, I feel like we've only seen like the Bills B game at best so far of the season. Like, they haven't really played it and put it together on both sides of the ball in any of the games, even in the first game of the season against Baltimore. Their offense was great, but their defense got completely shredded. So we just have yet to see them put it all together. And I guess my take is, I think when all the chips are down in a single game elimination, I think the Bills A game might just be the strongest A game that there is and the Eagles.
Speaking of Eagles, a friend of the show, Jim Whitley. So Bird Gang, as he's a Philly native growing up, of course. So despite him living in Virginia here, actually, you met Jim. Now that I think about it, Jenna, when we brought him to Buffalo. So
my
good
gosh.
dude there. Yep. So
hello, how's it going?
So full circle there, and then our Texas family down there, they're saying hello, of course, as well. So good to see them. But Sean wanted to kind of bring it on to baseball now, talking about some Pirates.
Can we do some Pirates? Can we do some doom and gloom?
We're well versed in doom and gloom here in Pittsburgh when it comes to baseball.
All right. So I got a question for you guys. Jenna and I talked about this a little bit with Skeens and what was going to happen like mid-season, or actually I think it was towards the beginning of the season.
And if I could also interject, we have Yankees, Blue Jays right now, top of the eighth. Toronto's up 4-1 on the Yankees right now, with the season on the brink for New York at the moment. I know many people will rejoice in that, of course, but at the same time, we're not sure if Aaron Judge will have that same kind of magic as he did last night.
Well, one of the people rejoicing is Jenna. Sorry, I'll just add this really quickly. She's the worst sports fan you know.
Not true.
She doesn't even care if her teams win. She just wants the team she hates to lose. So she's a big Red Sox fan, and nothing makes her happier than the Yankees losing. So she's definitely fired up. But okay, go ahead. Let's jump into some Pirates talk.
Just a quick Pirates, and also too, as Chris knows, I was worried. I was losing my voice earlier this week. So this is a little bit of a long question. I'm going to try to power through it for you guys.
Yeah, he was at the game the other night. So
Paul Skeens, he wraps up his rookie season. He basically comes out in the media and says, this year it's going to be a wasted season if the Pirates don't learn from their mistakes. Too many players and the organization as a whole, they just need to be better. And it's rare to hear that from that kind of honesty from a guy who's a really young player, but it speaks volume about where this team is and obviously his role as a premier player, not only on the team in the franchise, but in the MLB at large. He's probably arguably one of the, if not the best pitcher statistically. Just he's just a beast since he's come in from LSU. And when you look at the bigger picture, under Ben Cherington, we've seen, I think, a pattern now of stalled development and misfires. Trading away some great arms like Glasnow, Baz, Musgrove, Talon, with little return and failing to build any sustainable offense around, the top guys now, Reynolds and O'Neal Cruz and company, signing short-term stopgaps that really go nowhere in terms of making a difference and never really making a meaningful free agent investment in a position player. And then there's Bob Nutting. The payroll remains near the bottom 5 in baseball every year. Even with revenue sharing, obviously there's talks about a salary cap may be coming into play, which would definitely help us, but we'll see what happens with that. But Nutting's been accused for years of running the team as a business first and a baseball operation second. Fans in Pittsburgh call him bottom line Bob for a reason. So here's my question, long-winded. Is there any realistic hope that this franchise can turn it around and build a legitimate playoff contender around Paul Skeens before he, continues to grow frustrated and wants out? And if anything, what needs to fundamentally change in the way that Cherington and Nutting operate to make that happen?
Well, the tough thing is if you're not going to spend any money, which would be the first step, which would be what I would do, invest just a little bit. When you have this window of opportunity with a generational arm, go for it, which we haven't seen the Pirates do. So that's one thing. They need to invest more, pay a little bit more. But then you have to have a GM that is just extremely savvy and wins on the margins. And that was the only time in my entire life, I'm 35 years old, they had like 3 years where they were competitive in my early 20s. And the way they did that was they were like, okay, we're going to have the best bullpen in baseball. They took a couple big gambles on some reclamation projects, Francisco Liriano and AJ Burnett, veteran guys who had been there and done that in legitimate markets. It didn't live up to expectations like in New York City as an ace, but in Pittsburgh, he could be your ace and do so at an affordable contract. And then they won a couple of big time trades. Like they had built up closers a couple times and then traded them away and were able to take their setup guy and turn him into a closer. And so you need to be so perfect. Your margin for error is so thin. And the problem the Pirates have right now is they're not spending any money, and they're completely failing with all of these deals. It seems like they're losing every trade instead of like stockpiling prospects. So can they be competitive with Paul Skeens? I would have to say no, because I have 35 years of telling me that they're going to screw this up. And like, I've reached the point that if Paul Skeens this offseason said, guys, I'm sick of this. I only have so many pitches in my arm. Trade me right now. I don't want to be a Pittsburgh Pirate. I think that I would have no problem with that. And a lot of people in Pittsburgh would be like, good for you for sticking it to Bob Nutting and the Pirates, because you deserve better. And that's really the way that I feel about Skeens is, for as great as he is being wasted in an absolutely trash organization like the Pirates.
Yeah, harsh criticism from the Pittsburgh native. You love to see it, folks.
It's so tough and it's so frustrating, because this city just yearns and clamors for competitive baseball. They just want to be able to go to a game. And I mean, most people go to games and you're getting some isolate mango, you're getting some pierogies, you're walking around, you're not really sitting and watching the game, unfortunately, just because of the product on the field. It's more of, hey, let's go to the Pirates game and hang out, not let's go to the Pirates game to watch Paul Skeens, to watch these guys, because of the product out there. This team has no run support. That was one of the biggest, most frustrating aspects of it this year, was Paul Skeens would pitch a gem. He'd go 6 innings, give up maybe a run, and the Pirates could not support that. They could not get their bats going, and you need multiple guys that can hit in this lineup. And yes, you have O'Neal Cruz. He's, hot and cold sometimes, but when he can hit the baseball, he hits the baseball. Brian Reynolds, but they don't have those guys who, the bottom of your lineup are really contributing, or really, hey, we can get a hit from this guy when we need him in the moment, in the circumstance to do it most. And, it feels like year after year, especially in my time covering the team, that, the season's almost over before it starts, because you look at what the Dodgers are doing, you look at what the Yankees are doing, you look at what the Mets are doing, and yes, the Mets missed the playoffs, but they're spending money where the Pirates just refuse to even put that money in the first place. And how are you going to be competitive when you do that? Now, granted, I do think coming into this season, they will have one of the strongest pitching staffs they've had in a long time. But again, how far does that get you when you don't have batters that can support that?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Bubba Chandler should be up. They have Barco is coming up. He looks awesome. Who else? Jones should be back.
Jared Jones coming back.
But that could be a very scary pitching staff. But like you said, I think there was a statistic. I think, did Skeens finish with a losing record? I think he did.
I think he might have. I have to go back and check, but I'm pretty sure he did, just because, again, he'd pitch these great games, give up a run, 2 runs maybe, and the Pirates would get shut out 2-0.
Yeah, and just to Jenna's point, one last thing here is everyone knew what was going to happen. When the season began, you just looked at their offseason and the season before, and you're like, okay, they didn't do anything to make this team better. Why would a logical person believe that things would be any different? And they weren't. And so I think that that's what the fan base is looking for, is like, they need to go out and make a couple big moves. They need to make moves in a couple signings to say, we are trying something different, because if they don't, then you're going to get the same results.
I mean, sounds familiar for a hockey team we're going to talk about after this one, but we'll do a quick word from our sponsors here, because we are brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. So quick word from them. So NFL fans, what is your favorite touchdown? For me, it is the next one, because with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, every touchdown could bring you closer to cashing in. So from your first touchdown scorer to anytime touchdown props or the thrill of live in-game betting, every snap is loaded with opportunity. So some current odds right now, as we talked about those aforementioned Steelers versus Browns odds. Steelers at 1 o'clock on Sunday are favored by 5.5 currently over Cleveland. And then if we're looking at the Bills on Monday Night Football, the very much coveted to us East Coast people, 7:15 on Monday Night Football. Love that. The Bills are favored 4.5 on the road against Atlanta. So that tells you something about the Falcons right there. But still, for those folks who are on the DraftKings Sportsbook line, Here's the best part. Bet just $5 and your bet wins $200 in bonus bets instantly. So it's one of my go-to destinations for obviously all the betting lines and odds, and hope it can be for you too. So for your team hitting pay dirt, it pays out to you. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. That's code THPN to turn $5 into $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. And that's in partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours. And for the disclaimer here, if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER in New York. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. And in Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpd.org. And please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, fees may apply in Illinois. 21 plus and age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bet must win to receive a reward. Minimum minus 500 odds required. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. And for additional terms of responsible gambling resources, see dkng.co/audio. And now back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Got to give Chris's. It's a mouthful.
Yeah. I've gotten pretty good at doing the disclaimer part on there. So again, for folks, anybody tuning in on any of our platforms right now, have about just over 1,200 viewers. Love to see that. But any questions for Mike and Jenna or for us, feel free to ask away. We'll try to get them answered throughout the show. So shifting things over a bit to some hockey. Sean, lead the way with that.
Yeah, it's been an interesting. We have a couple games in. We started yesterday. There's some games on. I was actually just watching the Caps. Caps are playing in a defensive. I don't know. It looked like everyone was trapping. It was 1-0 deep into the second. But Penguins, got to talk about them. It's an interesting time. I'd love to hear your guys' perspective on kind of where things are and still in between keeping their long in the tooth core, but trying to slowly build more for the future with injections of youth in the roster. The team made several trades, for draft picks, signed forwards like Anthony Mantha, Justin Brazeau, and then also shoring up the backup goaltending spot with Arturas Silovs. Even Marc-Andre Fleury back maybe one more time for the preseason. So that's interesting. Matt Dumba, great defenseman, was acquired as a free agent. Connor Clifton, a guy that people on our show know well from Buffalo, is there. And the last couple of seasons, it's been kind of frustrating as well. And obviously we can relate with no playoffs, a feeling that Sabres fans know all too well at this point. But what will it take for new coach Dan Muse to help right the ship for this season with the current core and maybe make one more run at a cup with the Crosby, Malkin, and Letang threesome?
They've kind of been delaying this rebuild too long. And finally, now they've gone into it with this approach of trying to get an infusion of youth. In the season opener, they started 2 teenagers. And they also, hiring Dan Muse, they were looking for a coach who could develop young talent. And so, like, the way that I look at it, I'm not sure that this year they might get Gavin McKenna. That would, to me, I think, be the most successful outcome of this season for the Steelers or the Penguins, is they get a super high draft pick and they happen to win the draft lottery. That would be a successful season because I don't think that their ceiling is too high. But what you're seeing is, like, when Kyle Dubas came in, he inherited one of the worst prospect pools in the NHL. And Jim Rutherford had done the right thing. Basically, he went for it, and he went for it big and said, I'm going to do everything in my power to win in the Sidney Crosby era. And then when he was done, it basically used up all of the resources. He's just like, I'm out of here. And he dipped. And he's like, someone else can fix this problem now. And so the Penguins had to live with that. And now they've finally started to build up their prospect pool. And I think that that's going to be the key is, like, can you develop enough of this young core where Crosby's still close enough to his prime that you have a window open? And it's been very challenging. Very few teams are able to do that. I don't know if they're going to be able to, but that's the hope.
And this team, you can just kind of tell the organization, the team are kind of trying to capitalize on the nostalgia and trying to say, hey, this is probably going to be the last ride with the big three of Sid, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang. I don't anticipate Letang or Malkin being on this team next year. Ooh, it just went dark in here. Thank God we got the light. But I think that, this Penguins team is not going to be the Penguins team of years past where, they're really competitive in every game. You have Sidney Crosby, so, you'll win more often than you lose. But I think it's going to be, you're going to see some really impressive things like, Tuesday night, the opening night where, their netminder pitches a shutout and he looks really good doing it. But I think more often than not, you're going to see the, contenders in the league, the Colorados, the Edmontons, the Minnesotas, the Dallases, like really beat up on the Penguins. And they're going to be at the bottom of the standings, I think, unfortunately, for a big majority of the year, just because of the way that they're comprised. This isn't a team with a ton of talent. You have a lot of, like you said, a lot of young kids who I think have a lot of potential and are going to be really solid players. But then you have, them, the core, and then the mix of a lot of these NHL journeymen, like you mentioned, Connor Clifton, Justin Brazeau, a lot of these guys who've kind of bounced around from team to team. And I don't know, you want to hope for, hey, maybe this can be one last run, but I just unfortunately don't realistically see that being the case. I think they're going to be more toward the bottom of the basement than fighting for a wild card spot late in the year.
Yeah, and speaking of last rides on here, so Jim, again, friend of the show, from the top rope, because we're in Capitals country here, he says, Ovechkin, great or greatest of all time, especially after the season he just had, because he's also in his last season here. What do you guys think?
Oof. That's a tough one. I put him as you guys
in Penguins country, like Crosby, Milk, all like drafted or started pretty much the same season with each other. So, what are your guys' takes on that?
Goal scorer, you gotta give it to him, right?
So he says obviously greatest. So a little biased there, of course. But I mean, hey, I was just along for the ride when the Caps won their cup back in 2018. But it was a fun time considering, again, you know the drill. No playoff hockey for the Sabres for some time. What do you guys think of Ovechkin at this point?
I think he's, we'll say, the greatest goal scorer of all time because he holds that record, right? But, I think I still have to give it to Wayne Gretzky. And then here in Pittsburgh, people also consider Mario Lemieux one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time. I mean, he retired twice, once because he had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and was forced to retire, then beat that, came back from that, which is incredibly remarkable, then retired again and was dealing with all kinds of bad back issues and other kinds of ailments, came back a second time. And if he didn't have those two breaks in his career, I think his stats would be right up there with some of the best. And I think that Sid is, I don't know where you want to put him, top 10, maybe top 5 of all time in terms of complete players. Things he does, they always talk about how he's such a 200-foot player, things that he's doing in the defensive zone. He has that defensive conscience. And then almost to a fault, he's always looking to set up his teammates and elevate the play of his teammates. I think that you could even make the argument, like if you're going to start a team with just one guy of that generation, I think half the people would say Ovechkin and half the people would say Crosby. And I think that's probably fair.
And how lucky are we to have got to witness both of them in their primes? Like that we always see those things like, oh, we exist at the same time as all this, but truly, I mean, getting to see both of those players and being able to have these discussions where they're two of the greatest playing at the same time, competing at the same time, just the Metro Division rivalry between these two teams. It felt like, the late 2010s through, the late, the 2010s, it just everything in the Eastern Conference ran through one of two of those teams was going to be matching up in the playoffs, and whichever one was going to advance was likely going to go on to play in the Cup final. So it's been so fun getting to see both of them, getting to witness the history that they've all made. But Sid is going to play until he can't anymore, like until he sees a drop off.
I have wondered if he's going to be like the Tom Brady of hockey.
Yeah,
because he loves it so much.
He looks like he mostly takes care of himself. I mean, Ovechkin is just another breed, of course. I mean, just looking at the way, like, obviously, we've seen the pictures of his off-season look, of course. So everybody knows his diet regimen. But, I mean, you could just compare the two players, Crosby and Ovechkin. And, I mean, it's been 20-plus years of just great, dominant play. And like you said, Jenna, just being able to just watch that and appreciate that, even just from like a observer's point of view, like you just got to do nothing but appreciate it, of course. But Mike, you talked a little bit of darkness already, but I'm going to take you down a dark path of the Buffalo Sabres now, unfortunately.
Okay.
But with that, and I see Jenna laughing, of course. Again, we couldn't go on without talking about them. And once again, Jenna knows this all too well. So the constant rebuild, the playoff drought, fans wanting Kevin Adams to do more than make comments about palm trees. This offseason, J.J. Peterka gets traded to Utah. But ultimately, though, this is arguably like the biggest acquisition for the team in the offseason, with right-handed defenseman Michael Kesselring and winger Josh Doan being the return items on there. So a lot of people think the addition of Kesselring will kind of help unlock more of Owen Power's game. And Josh Doan, son of Shane Doan, of course, has a lot of that like glue guy DNA in him there. So hope to see like him like move the team in a better direction there as well. Re-signing Bowen Byam to a bridge deal. Talked about that aforementioned trade with Pittsburgh. The Penguins got Connor Clifton, but in return, the Sabres got Connor Timmins as well as an AHL prospect. And ultimately, you have now everybody's favorite public enemy defenseman, Matthias Samuelsson, now down to the third pairing, I think, much to everybody's happiness there. But for you guys as hockey fans and for people that cover the game as well, do you see any hope of the Sabres breaking that 14-year playoff drought this season? And obviously they have some statistical websites on their side this time around, JFresh Hockey, Evolving Hockey, even folks like The Athletic, some of your colleagues there, Mike, like Don Luscheisen, being kind to them and them having probably one of their best shots yet for making the postseason. So what are your guys' thoughts on the Sabres going into this year?
I feel like I keep hearing constantly just, from around people around the league and seeing, writers on Twitter that, maybe it's not necessarily a hot take, but it's just like, hey, this actually might be the Sabres year to kind of break through and get into the postseason. And in the NHL, obviously, it's easier to get into the postseason than it is to not make the postseason. But I do feel maybe this is the Sabres year. Just again, at some point, water has to find its level, the ice has to break, the glass has to break, however you want to say it. But I think that the core that this team has, I think, is a very, very solid one. I love the leadership they have. Tage Thompson has been one of my favorite players since he came into the league, just what he brings, how he plays, his style of play. I really like what I see from him kind of on a consistent basis. Alex Tuch, obviously, being a massive role player for them too. I think there is upside to this team this year. I think there's going to be bumps in the road, as there always are, but I don't think, I go back to my time covering them, I don't think this is like the perpetual doom and gloom that it was when it was just Eichel's there, Reinhardt's there, and they just can't find ways to win games. And, it's that, 10-game win streak followed by a 10-game losing streak, the flip-flopness. I think
right. You were there for that one. That's right. Yes.
Oh, yeah. That was a time, but I think there's going to be more consistency from this team, and that's what you need to succeed in the NHL and to kind of really build that season toward getting into the postseason. Are they Stanley Cup contenders right now? I don't entirely think so, but I do think this might be the year where things just work out enough that they're a couple points ahead of a wild card spot. Like I think they'll be in that sweet spot and they'll be fighting for the end of the season. I think it might happen though.
I think they've got a chance. Let's not give up on the Buffalo Sabres quite yet. There's still plenty of time for that as the year progresses. So it's early. I think that if I were a Buffalo Sabres fan, I would be hoping for, hey, maybe this is the year they squeak into the playoffs as a wild card team. You never know. Hockey is a sport with a fair amount of parity. I think that, if I'm not mistaken, also the highest percentage of teams make the playoffs. So they've got a shot, right?
Sure, we say that every year, of course.
That parity is what makes it more amazing. It's been 14 years.
Yeah,
get lucky to make it. But Chris, before I let you say what you're going to say, I think, guys, that the Atlantic Division specifically is about the weakest.
Just going to say that I'll let you go for that one. Yes, you go. Sorry, Sean, I interrupted. Go for it.
No, I was to say, I think that the Atlantic Division is just the weakest that it's been. Boston's kind of bottoming out after their amazing run that they've had.
Right.
Tampa should be good. Toronto lost Marner. We talked about it in our last pod. So things are kind of changing. And then Ottawa's emerging. Montreal's up and coming. And I think Chris, I can speak for Chris, just this new mix of being a more physical team that can play tough in the corners, guys that will fight, stand up for their their star players. They seem to have a mix, and also I think the underlying factor it's a little bit different is Lindy Ruff was in place to make the personnel changes and decisions this offseason that he wasn't for last offseason. So like he kind of designed this team and had a big hand in moving Peterka for more grit and two-way defensive play.
And I think hearing too, just kind of from people still back in Buffalo and just seeing the response, like the players love playing for Lindy Ruff. And I know that seems at face value, like, yeah, okay, the players love playing for the coach, but I think that goes so far. And again, going back to Ralph Kruger days with this team, like it's absolutely night and day. Speaking of soccer there, Mike, with your soccer hat, but that, I think that you need the buy-in, obviously, but when you have a coach who's done it in the way that Ruff's done it, I think that also bodes really well for what this team can build on, the foundation that they have and the forward progress that they want to make.
I mean, those who follow the Sabres, at this point, for those like still clinging to the fandom at this point, I mean, they've lost easily a generation or more of fans just because of how long it's been at this point, and just hockey as a whole in the region. Still, like, there's such an underlying love for the game still, and if the team actually we've talked about this a few times now recently, Sean, if the team actually makes that push this year and they finally like break through and make the playoffs, like the whole region, like especially that time of year, and even just downtown Buffalo as a whole, just explode because everybody will be invested again. Like when they were a great team, it was like there was always something to do every single night that a game was on, and it was just like appointment viewing no matter what, because again, like the Bills, everybody lives and dies for the team, of course. I mean, you guys know all too well, Pittsburgh's just as loyal of a sports town as any out there, but still Buffalo, they're starving for a good hockey team. Even just looking at the Stanley Cup viewing ratings, like the viewership is always Buffalo is always one of the top markets watching. And if the Sabres are good, I mean, I think it's great for the NHL.
It really is.
Let's hope. They really do. I have to give it to Buffalo in general. I think Buffalo does have fantastic fans, dedicated sports fans, so they deserve a winner.
Yeah.
And Mike's favorite food, chicken wings.
And chicken wings also. Not only is it my favorite food, it's one of my favorite things about being alive. Like I love wings so much. I can't even put into words.
So now, obviously, you got to know Jenna because of her time in Buffalo, and she took you probably to plenty of the great places in your trips to Buffalo for games, of course. But what would be your favorite spot? Just putting you on the spot right here, Mike.
I think it's a tie. I really do like Barbell a lot. I think that those are some of the best ones I've
easy
ever
one
had
right
in my
there.
life.
Yes.
I think they're exceptional, and I also really like wing nuts. And I preferred it when it was actually when it was in the Knights of Columbus 2 times when I was on road trips, and I just loved the rinky-dink nature of it, where you had to order on Facebook Marketplace or whatever it was, Facebook Messenger, and like a day in advance, only to go sit at a card table at the Knights of Columbus.
It was like an urban legend at that point.
Yeah, it was. Everything about it was amazing. The wings were phenomenal, and the experience was even better.
Oh, yeah. And the wings are still good, even despite their new locations. Jenna, I know you had some experiences there as well.
I did. Yeah. Oh, my gosh. I think taking Mike to Wingnuts the first time, that like our wedding day and the day he had his first Wingnuts experience was the time I've seen him smile the biggest, for sure, in this marriage.
1 and 2 in some order.
Yes.
That is
depending
fantastic.
on the day, which one?
Absolutely fantastic. So last thing I want to kind of do, just as we're kind of wrapping things up here, just making a little bit of fun here. So this next segment, we started this in the last couple of months now. It's called the Grind My Gears or the Give Them Their Flowers segment. And this is brought to you by our literal day one sponsor, Larger Than Life Blooms, because size matters, of course. So anyway, what this segment's about. So you can either lay some hate, talk to us. What is truly grinding your gears? Is it something in sports life, work life, everyday life? Anything you just truly cannot stand. So we would love to hear your guys' perspective on this. Or is there something or someone in your life where you're really grateful for, want to give your thanks for? I mean, you guys are married, so that might be a great place to start, of course. But still, with that, I'll kind of start things off. So something that's been grinding my gears lately, my normal day job, many people know I'm a teacher, but still, literally one of the only jokes the kids have right now is the 6-7 song or 6-7 anything. It's just like, you guys know what I'm talking about, whether it's the lyrics, just mentioning it, anything about it. The kids are always trying to just shoehorn this in, 6-7, 6-7. It's literally any conversation. I try and like catch myself before walking into it as like a trap, just so they can like get you. And they try and set not only me, but like others for it too. So I just don't understand it. It literally makes zero sense. And this is like further proof that this show has also not sounded older. So, I mean, what are your guys' things that either grind in your gears or you got some flowers to give? Let's hear it.
I'll start. The thing that's grinding my gears right now, and it's very Buffalo themed, Buffalo on brand in a good way. The tweet the Bills put out when the Blue Jays were hosting the Yankees and we're taking on the Yankees in the whatever series they're in right now because the Red Sox lost. So I stopped, really locking in. And everybody went off and everyone's like, oh, you can't call yourself New York's team and all this. I'm like, does anybody realize that the AAA affiliate for the Blue Jays is in Buffalo? I was like, everybody like, I don't know. It was Yankees fans, shockingly. So they're all just, oh, well, you're not real New York's team. And you say all this stuff about the Jets and the Giants not being in New York, being in New Jersey. How can you do? I'm like, dude, there was no context to it. And I'm just like, why? If you do a tiny bit of research, you just look, you're like, oh yeah, of course they're going to do that. They're AAA affiliates in the city.
Yeah, that's some thick-headed thinking right there. So, Mike, how about you? You going to lay some hate?
No, I'll do the opposite. Let's give some flowers to the Bills fans in general. So you were describing all of the recent Steelers versus Bills games, and you touched upon the one when TJ Watt somehow basically single-handedly helped the Steelers beat Josh Allen and the Bills in that game. That was my first game in attendance at any event after COVID. And I went with my buddy who grew up in Orchard Park, and he texted me and he said, I can confirm there's going to be a table at the tailgate. And the tailgate did not disappoint at all. It lived up to all of the hype. I had an amazing experience at the game. Fans were competitive, but no one was inappropriate or said anything mean towards me. They were pretty nice to me as an opposing fan. Maybe because I was with my buddy who is a Bills fan, but
that always helps. Always helps.
I really, as someone who grew up in Pittsburgh and knows the pain and the suffering that comes with a baseball team that can't win, like I would love to see the Bills at some point crack through and win the Super Bowl, and for this to be their year.
Much appreciated with that, Mike, of course. So, no, Jim, you did not miss grind my gears. So if you want to chime in, feel free. So, but Sean, how about you?
I'll just give a quick flowers to our buddy, TG, Mr. Tim Graham. Mike,
yes.
Your colleague. I'm hoping to hang out with him this coming weekend once I go up and travel from Buffalo to be with Chris to do our show at Rich Brow on Friday. Shameless plug. If you're in Richmond, come on down. We'll be taking live questions with Ty Dunn. But yeah, Tim Graham will be coming down to cover the game. Obviously, Bills play Monday night in Atlanta, so back in my neck of the woods. So hopefully get to have some beers and hang out with TG because he's a blast to hang out with. A great guy.
Absolutely. So Tim was on our last live show at Rich Brow back in August. So again, a solid dude all around in every capacity of it. And I know I remember when we met him at MafiaCon back in July. I mean, he spoke highly of you as well, Mike. So.
Yeah, Tim's a good guy. You mentioned he's fun to hang out with after a couple beers, and I can confirm that one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But anyway, as we're kind of wrapping things up, Jenna, Mike, this has been an absolute pleasure, of course. Like I said, the couple that yins together. So very grateful for your time. But could you guys tell us, what do you guys have cooking, whether it's on the TV side for you guys or something in the pipeline that you're writing, Mike? Love to hear what you guys are working on, and give yourselves a plug, of course.
Well, our newest project is a podcast called The Insiders, and it's kind of tongue in cheek. We told you about what yins means, but I also think it's funny that like everybody that covers a team is an insider. And so it's kind of poking fun at that, but we talk about all the Pittsburgh sports, and it's kind of fun because I'm a print media guy. Jenna is a broadcasting superstar. So it gives us an opportunity to talk about sports in a little bit of a different way. It's also funny because we basically have these conversations every night at dinner, and now you can kind of get a sense of what it's like to be at our dinner table every night, and how basically we never turn off the sports here at home.
That's very, very spot on. We have a fun segment too. Our dog Zeke, degenerate gambler that he is, gives us his best picks of the week, and Zeke was on the Colts train. Week 1, he picked the Colts before anybody else. So we're like,
you heard it there first.
Did they play? Was it the Dolphins week 1? Whoever they played week 1.
Dolphins.
I asked, we're doing it with him, and he was immediately. I was like, Zeke's going the Dolphins, and then he just like swacked my hand with his paw, and I was like, oh, you're going Colts. Do you want to switch here? So Zeke has been on the Colts train. But yeah, we're having a lot of fun with that. We're, diving into AFC North play here this weekend. So, check out Mike's phenomenal coverage that he does leading up to game day and on game day. We got some Sunday night games coming up. So if you're in the Pittsburgh area in a couple weeks when they play Green Bay, we'll have all the fun things ahead for that. Some cool sit-down interviews with some of the players and just all the big production to get ready for, primetime football under the lights here in Pittsburgh.
Love it.
Awesome. Love to hear that. Again, so grateful for your guys' times. So thank you guys very much.
So much.
Yeah. But for folks, again, for our 1,300 plus, nearly 1,400 on all platforms, thank you so much for tuning in. Like we said a few times throughout the show, Sean and I will both be live at Rich Brow Brewery in downtown Richmond with our remote guest, Tyler Dunn of GoLongTD.com. So again, additional reminder, our initial postings had it start at 7. The show will now be at 8:30 p.m. So we're looking forward to seeing all Richmond Bills Mafia and other fandoms, of course, because Tyler covers the league at large. So for being able to attend, like I said, Jenna and Mike, this was wonderful. We hope to do this again soon with you guys sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
We would love
this
that.
was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having us. We'd be happy to come back anytime.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It was great. Shawnee V, any parting thoughts?
No, let's go Buffalo and Bob Nutting. Solid team.
There you go, folks. That'll do it for us. Thanks for tuning in. And like Sean said, let's go Buffalo.